This morning we're going to learn about the compact command. And the compact command essentially defrags all of the data located in a document as well as any indexes. And so we're going to look at this. And one of the things that you may note for people coming from the world of SQL is that it has some similarities. 1 second here. I have an error going on. Okay, it has some similarities to SQL Server. So let's look at this briefly, and then we'll kind of discuss some of the details. Now, I'm not going to go into every single thing about it. I am going to cover the padding factor as well as kind of the syntax here. So what we're going to do is we're going to execute our db.run command here after I connect to SQL in 6. And we are going to pass in the compact, and then the collection name, in this case, is fast data. And I'm going to choose a padding factor of 2. So, good question to ask would be, so what is a padding factor of 2 versus 1 versus 10? The maximum, by the way, is 4. The minimum is 1. And default is 1. Okay. So, think of padding factor as like, you have a document, and let's suppose it has 100 characters. I'll explain it this way. This is not a perfect analogy. This is not perfectly what goes on, but think of it like this. It has 100 characters. Well, you decide to update that document and expand it to 300 characters. Okay. Well, if you have a padding factor, I mean, in other words, if you have a padding factor of, let's say, 2, or if you don't have 1, basically, if you have some room, the update operation is, let's say, less expensive. Okay, and it's similar. The way that I think of it is similar to fill factor in SQL Server, right? The idea is your fill factor should be 100, meaning there's no fill factor, or there's no room. All of the pages are compressed, essentially. All of the data, I should say, are compressed into their spaces. And the reason why is because some of my updates or some of my databases, I don't update the data ever. They're just insert operations. So I know that I'm never going to go back in and update it. Well, that may be useful in MongoDB as well, right? In other words, we may not want any space because we know we will never update data. But if we're going to update data and we're going to expand the size of a specific document, if we have no padding factor, that can start creating problems. Or it's not going to create a problem so much as it is just going to end up being very expensive before it's over with. So stating a padding factor of some if you know that there could be updates. And this is where it kind of goes to the world of it depends, right? So, I mean, if your data set, no updates, for instance, stock data, no updates in my stock data, then I don't need to worry about fill factor being, let's say 80. And I'm trying to think, 80 I think is generally the common one that I've seen, whereas I do 100 fill factor on that data set. But then there are other data sets, a lot of it is text-based data, that I know there are going to be updates. And I'll go ahead and specify a fill factor, let's say, 80 instead. Same thing with padding factor. If you know there's going to be some updates to your data and maybe some expansion, you want to move closer to the maximum padding factor, which of course is 4. The minimum, which is no padding, is 1. So it depends on the data set, how much of your data are going to be updated, and if your updates are going to expand the size of your documents. If you know for a fact that all of the updates are going to shrink the size, probably not that big of a deal.